Hi, ladies and gents. Welcome to this week's episode. I'm Neil Pickup, and I'm joined by No Limits, Devon Larratt. This is a man who's known for a lot of different technical range. He's got a lot of weapons in his arsenal. Today, we want to focus on what a lot of people probably believe is the most fundamental cornerstone of the sport of arm wrestling. This is the inside body of techniques, generally known as hooking, the hook. One interesting thing about Devon is that a lot of people believe that in order to do the hook well, in order to be a really top-class exponent of the hook, you've got to have a short lever. It lends itself to that shorter four-armed athlete. Not really the case at all. And Devon understands this technique very, very well. So we thought we'd take time out here to show you a little bit more of the finer points of this technique and how you guys can build it into your arsenal at the table to make you a better all-round puller. Devon, welcome to the show, mate.
Hey guys, Neil.
Thanks for giving up your time, brother. Yeah. So the hook, Devon, obviously it's something that you've been known throughout your career for being very solid in there. You were known for the endurance. And the hook is something that you were one of the few tall, long-levered athletes to really embrace early in your career, mate. Was it the first technique that you started to use in the sport?
Yeah, so when I started arm wrestling as a kid, I was a natural hook press kind of guy. So like so many people, I knew that I was strong when I brought my shoulder forward, saw my palm and was able to just bring everything to my center. And it was only when I met professional arm wrestlers that I was kind of taken off that path, taught how to top roll and post. But that was always my center for definitely the first part of my career until I got surgery, which opened up, it was kind of like a Control-Alt-Delete for me. And then it took a few years for my elbow stability to return to a place where I was comfortable again to bring the hook back into my game.
Now, Devon, when let's pretend I'm a complete novice coming in, and you were breaking this technique down for people at home to sort of utilize more effectively.
Okay.
What do you believe are the real foundation points in terms of that setup, the setup position to gain the hook? And we can start here, if you like, even at the position of the feet, the position of the elbow, the position of the hand and wrist. If we break those down into sort of separate elements and build it up.
Okay, well, I would say, just from a very simple standpoint, when you think of hook, the main thing you're thinking about is your wrist becoming flexed. This is a massive part of what the hook is. It's a massive part of the hook strength, to be able to bring somebody inside and keep them tucked away.
So that's that really closed wrist, anything from straight to this position, a closed wrist position.
And what is coupled with that strength is the bringing of the shoulder forward. And the bringing of the shoulder forward, what it does is it disrupts your opponent's bone line. It allows you to become more mechanical, and it actually allows you to protect your bicep. A lot of people, when they hook, will be more open in like a defensive hooking position. And this will be very reliant on your bicep strength, and this is really important in all of hooking. Bicep strength is very important in the match, but to save it, this supination is the angle which is really vital to understand.
So maybe a good angle for this, guy, Dennis, if you take up an angle just behind Devon's shoulder there, just around there, and you'll see the effect of what Devon's talking about. When he talks about bone line, that's the linearity between shoulder and forearm.
And you see right now, Neil's shoulder and his hand make a line, and it actually cuts into my arm. And my shoulder and my hand actually points into his body. That means that Neil's bone line is actually superior to mine at the moment for inside arm wrestling. What can be done to improve this is always edging forward. If I can, by cupping my wrist in and bringing my shoulder forward and supinating, what this does is it puts all the pressure on my opponent's bicep and allows me to guard everything with my shoulder.
So we can show that from two angles. Basically where we were before, My forearm line was here. It was maybe, if we measure that up, about 2.5 to 3 inches this way. If I'm talking to my wife, about 6 inches this way. But if we're looking at that from sort of behind Devin's shoulder line, and I do it back to him, okay, as I come forward and I supinate, you can see that position there has changed. He's gone quite a big separation now between that original position, which was here, bang, into there. And it's knocked him outside his natural, strong, linear position. And he's got to adjust and make movements to accommodate that.
When you think about arm wrestling really in the World Arm Wrestling League, whenever I assess what I'm going to do, I always try and choose the path of least resistance. So to me, actually hooking in inside arm wrestling is a defensive move for a few reasons. The main reason is you're giving up pronation. You're no longer attacking the person's fingers. I feel like fundamental arm wrestling, you take a person's hand while keeping your shoulder. And when you feel that this is going to be too difficult, and you feel that your option is you don't have quite enough hand to take the person's hand completely, that's when you start to think, okay, I'm going to just isolate on their arm. It's, in my opinion, much easier to hook with a strap. Because when you hook with a strap, it lowers the requirement for wrist flexion, which against a very skilled top rolling arm wrestler, a good top roller can really attack this angle, especially if you're showing that you're really coming forward. And if you don't have a good flop wrist press, this is a problem. So in the World Arm Wrestling League, it's fairly easy to acquire a strap. And the main drive that hooking arm wrestlers should be thinking about is the connection, bringing their hands close to their body. And that will open up the bicep angle, which is really, really vital. So just when you're thinking about hooking, this is the same as wrist flexion. So you can wrist flex, but with the strap, just the ability to drag your elbow backwards is going to open up this angle, which is a great way to attack somebody on the inside. And when you say inside arm wrestling, it's important to know that you're coming forward with your shoulder. So if I know that I'm going to try and beat the person with inside, I'm gonna push my hand as far forward as I can.
This is a lower palm, so that fatty lower part of your palm there,
you
driving that deep, yeah. My palm there, and you're more evident with a smaller hand really, I'm gonna push forward as far, as deep in there as I can, staying just behind that knuckle, and then the index finger, I'm gonna come as high behind his index finger knuckle as possible to give myself the best chance of controlling that hand.
And it's this drop then, because he's got so much depth, his ability to drop
into the move.
When I'm pulling up, the lat is just much more powerful than the bicep. So typically, this opening will beat this opening, especially in a strap.
The other important thing to note there is that if you can imagine that my wrist is the hinge of a door, you ever try and open a door from near the hinge? I've moved the hinges so far forward, I've moved it so close to that hinge point that he's got all that distance to travel into and he's not finding any leverage on that wrist. When he does so, it'll make it far more difficult to break open. Ideally, I'd be the first to react as well.
Yeah, and that's the difference between kind of a defensive hook and an offensive hook. The big difference is who has more shoulder commitment. Right now, Neil has a really good setup to have a good offensive hook. I do not. Whoever has their shoulder tucked more in, it's very difficult for the other person to bring their shoulder in when the other person's shoulder is already committed.
Yeah.
It's like you're going into a break arm position.
Yes.
If you can cross that threshold, the other person will be left with absolutely nothing, and you're a way stronger person. Mm-hmm. But in this position, I would probably be forced into a defensive hook. Ideally, when you're setting up, you want to be forcing off the center line all the time, cutting this angle so that no matter what, you're always on their bicep. So at any point in the match, your shoulder's always coming forward. Anytime their shoulder comes forward, you will match it just like a bull.
until they're forced to run from you.
What
And
he means by that is, as if I come forward, in actuality, you can see how he's preventing, he's creating that separation from myself and that shoulder line. I can't connect with my shoulder, and therefore, I'm not getting any access to my strength. If I adjust, he'll do the same again, and continue to do that, make it so the referee has to force that. And even in that position, you want to be the guy that is taking the lead with the shoulder, taking the lead with making sure that you're accessing that power all the time.
So a good top roller, a good inside arm wrestler should, in the set, control the other arm wrestlers so that they have to run away from you. And by doing so, this allows them to utilize this strength, this dropping strength, to very quickly open the top roller's bicep angle. So what it looks like on the start is if they were to say ready, go, all my energy is based on bringing my elbow close to my body, my wrist flexing in hard, and my shoulder moving in enough to protect my supination. Because I would much rather, just bend your wrist in for me. See how he turns me over? I would much rather not be in this position, because see how he's on my bicep? I would much rather be in this position. Mm-hmm. Because this way I have my shoulder behind and I'm able to use my structure much more than my musculature.
Devin, if we move on to the finishing, the position in the middle of the match and the finish of the match, which is very important. A lot of people lose power when they go to finish a hook.
Right. Okay, so once you've stuck your hook, this is fantastic. A lot of times you will not be strong enough to finish a person. It doesn't matter what move you're in. You always want to think about getting more efficient. A lot of efficiency comes from pulling the match closer to you. So if I'm here, I can tuck it inside my body. If I see the pin, I can maybe go for it. But if it's not there, there's a principle that I like to call returning to center that I always try and do. So what I did to acquire my shoulder position, what I did to get this strong hook, was I gave away my pronation and my posting and bicep involvement. So when the match stops and I get my stick and I can't finish, what I'll do is I'll try and reacquire these strengths, okay, and start to try and come through the top. And if my opponent ever forces me to bring my shoulder back in, this is fine. But it allows me to develop a stronger position so that I can further retreat once again into a hook if they surge.
So what's actually happening there when Devin's in that position? He sets, and then what I'm feeling there is an upward pressure then. He's coming up almost below the line of his jaw, up, resets, and then resets again. And it's a continuous work through of that motion to gain incremental motion, gain those incremental wins to get that finish.
And just because you start in a hook, it doesn't mean you need to finish there. You could roll out, you could transition into a press, or you can just stick in that deep hook until the person's completely gassed out. They're all good options.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you picked up some valuable information there. Devin, thanks for giving us your time, mate, and thanks for giving us that insight on the hook.
Turn and burn.